Well, it's incredibly frightening in terms of what the repercussions are going to be, not just for the families of the people whose jobs have been cut, but for the whole community and the surrounding area. You know, it's not just the jobs that are being cut at Tata and Port Talbot, but that has a knock-on effect. There's a kind of domino effect for the whole region, support work that's going on, other people, jobs that are dependent on what's going on at the steelworks. So, you know, and Port Talbot is a town that has a lot of challenges already. It's not the most affluent of towns. There's a lot of difficulties there that the community is facing. There was a report that said that you know, there's a lot of poverty already in Port Talbot, and half of the people who are experiencing the effects of poverty are working households. So if people who are in work are experiencing the effects of poverty, who knows what's going to happen when these job cuts happen as well. So it's a very frightening time for the town.
What you describe on a human level sounds terrible, but on an economic level, we know that this is somewhere losing £1 million a day. Are you saying that the government should carry on handing out more cash here?
Well, you know, this is, like you say, it's part of a much bigger picture. The whole of the steel industry, as we've seen through the cuts at Redcar and in other places like Scunthorpe, Hartlepool in Scotland as well, this is not necessarily an industry that seems to be on the up and up. It seems to be going in one direction. The government says that they're doing everything they can to help it, but their actions and their words don't really fit together. I mean, I'm no expert. I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but I know that a lot of people feel that there's a lot of positive words coming out, but that the actions are not really backing that up, or so if they are, it's happening too slowly and in too small a way.
Do you know what actions you'd like to see then? I mean, in specific terms, without asking the government to just waste more money on something that's not working, what would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see the government be honest, first of all, about whether they really do want to support the steel industry or whether they're just letting it die by stealth. And if they are allowing that to happen, or if they do think that there is no way to support the steel industry, or if they're really kind of dragging their heels over getting involved in the EU rules that are there that are slowing things down, then they need to put into place very quickly support for the communities that are being affected in this way.
Michael,
if there's nothing else there for those communities, then that's the biggest danger, isn't it?
Let's put some of those points straight to Anna Soubry now. Do you accept what Michael Sheen is saying, that actually all he's asking for is honesty, that if the government doesn't back it...
I'm happy to do that. I mean, what he probably doesn't know, he makes a very valid point that, of course, this is a dreadful day. And so when, for example, we know that we effectively, you know, SSI closed up in Redcar, so there is no more steel in Redcar. £80 million there, absolutely to support that community so that those workers can get into new jobs and indeed through to the supply chain. The same in Scunthorpe. No doubt the Welsh Government will also come up with the same.
Isn't it extraordinary, though, that this has happened? We are being
very honest about it. And the other thing is...
Just a second, because this has happened in Redcar, in Scunthorpe, in Port Talbot. Yes, but you've had the Business Select Committee saying the government was not alert to steel industry crisis warnings. They were asleep at the wheel. How many times does it have to happen before you get on top of it?
They're very different. No, we are on top of it. What happened up in Redcar was different. That was a steelworks that had been losing £600 million over 2.5-3 years. That was never going to happen anymore. It was gone. And there were huge problems with the tie owners as well. The difference with Tata is quite profound. First of all, they've been trying to sell their long division, which is based in Scunthorpe, for some 2 years. And it looks like we found a buyer. We are doing everything we can to make sure that we play a full part in securing that deal. And I can't go into the deal of that.
Is that right? Tata is going to sell it?
It was on the market 2 years ago.
Right.
In Scunthorpe. That's what we call the long division.
OK, but now we're looking at Port
Talbot is very different. At Port Talbot, they've already brought the consultants in, basically to say, right, what do we need to do to keep this place, to make sure that it's absolutely sustainable? So they've brought the consultants in. Unfortunately, 1,000 jobs have already gone.
Right.
That's part of it. But there's a huge amount that we can do there, and we're willing to do it when Tata come to us with their asks.
What is that then? Are you going to put more money in?
We can't put more money into it. The state aid rules don't allow it. But what we can do, what we have done, electricity prices, for example. We've implemented 4 of the 5 asked: electricity prices, emissions directive, dumping, which I'm quite happy to discuss what we've done on dumping, which I don't think Michael knows about. And the other thing that we've done is that we've looked at the procurement rules. That is hugely important. No other government in the European Union has changed the procurement rules as we've done.
There is a sense amongst British steel companies, as you well know, that in many cases they're not even allowed to tender for jobs, for example, at Hinkley Point on a nuclear plant.
That's completely different, and in fact,
it's
60%,
quite important to the steel industry in Britain.
60%, we reckon, will be available of the steel to be used. Unfortunately,
wait, I don't understand that.
Because I'm going to explain.
Have they been allowed to tender for work on Hinkley Point?
There will be 60. Hang on,
have they been allowed?
Yes. Can I explain why? Though there is a problem. 60% of the steel should be available for British Steel. However, 40%, basically, of forgings is no longer made in this country. So that's the point about Hinkley Point. But in terms of the billions of pounds of infra... Well, this is really important,
I know, and I want to put you something that a Labour MP, Paul Blomfield, has said. Because he's talked about Sheffield Steel companies being told by representatives of Arriva and EDF there would not be an opportunity to bid on nuclear repairs. And in part of the justification that they were told that EDF had acquired Nuclear Electric to provide work for underutilised French manufacturing assets. Is he wrong?
I don't know, because I don't know.
Why not? He said that in October, and you said you didn't know then, and you'd be looking into it.
No, Arriva, I do know about that, so we don't make the steel for that.
EDF.
So you see, people say things, but when you look at it...
EDF acquired Nuclear Electric, and he's saying that Sheffield companies have not been allowed, steel companies, British steel companies, have not been able to tender. That's what he said.
Maybe
they've not had the opportunities to bid for large forged steel
but can we talk about what the government can do?
Well, I just want to get to the bottom of that, because that is quite important. Do you accept that's quite important?
What?
If the government is promoting British steel industry or not?
Let me explain what we're doing. We've changed the procurement rules. It's never been done before. So for government contracts, there is now no excuse not to buy British steel. That's never been done before. And more than that, we've quantified the amount of steel that we anticipate to be available in the billions of pounds that we're putting into the infrastructure of this country. So HS2 is a really good example.
Okay.
We've quantified it, and then we've shared those figures
but we don't know what's happening at Hinkley Point.
And also, you heard the PM and what the Prime Minister said, and this is the point I hope that Michael takes away, which is we are absolutely determined that we will keep steel production at both Scunthorpe and at Port Talbot.
Okay.
And as he will know, Michael knows,
and the point
steel
that Plaid
production
Cymru
is
have
blast
made,
furnaces.
they have asked you not to give China market economy status at the WTO.
Yeah.
Are you going to?
Well, it's the decision of the European Union, but can I just make it very clear?
What do you think that decision should be? Should China have market economy status?
I'm going to say, in theory, yes, but they have to prove that they will play by the rules. And can I also say it's really important that we have, for the first time in July, then in November, and there's a rebar decision pending, for the first time voted in favour of protectionist measures. That's never happened before. They were so shocked in the European Union at the vote.
They say
they went back to the British
that you are
delegation
helping
to check
China by giving it market economy status.
No,
the overall
the
sense that workers in Port Talbot have is that your government is more preoccupied with keeping China happy than keeping Wales employed.
Well, that's the spin that's put on it.
That's how it comes across.
That comes across to you, but I can absolutely...
That was Leanne Wood from Plaid Cymru.
Exactly, that comes across to her, but I can absolutely assure you, one, we have voted in a way that's never happened before to protect steel, and secondly, most importantly perhaps, is the political will expressed by the Prime Minister to make sure we continue to produce steel blast furnaces at Port Talbot and also at Scunthorpe. That is the determination, and we've delivered on 4. Forgive me, you didn't ask me what the 5th one we haven't delivered on, but that's a review into rates.
I'm going to go back to Michael Sheen. Does this make more sense to you now, Michael? Does it give you confidence? There is the political will that they are committed to steel in this country and in Port Talbot specifically.
Well, I think, the workforce in the steelworks there and the larger community have been kind of in the dark for a long time. As soon as it started to become clear that there was problems, people were desperate to find out, what the plan was by the company itself, and whether the government had a strategy to sort this out. I don't think anyone in Port Talbot is feeling any clearer about that right now. And obviously in the country itself, the country has suffered so much in the deindustrialized era after the iron and coal industry has gone. Those communities in places like the Rhondda that I've visited are still feeling decimated by what happened. And I would hate to see that happen in Port Talbot as well.
Is it worth the government spending money on, if you like, a way of life, a community to keep that cohesion together?
Of course it is, and that's why we put £80 billion up into Teesside, for example. But can I just say to Michael, I mean, I went to Port Talbot, I went there for a day, and I know that obviously that's where you were born and bred. But actually, one of the things that really strikes me is not just the union representatives, who are outstanding and genuinely, I think, represent their members, but actually was the level of honesty and realism amongst, they're mainly men, but amongst the men themselves. I think they do get it. And I was really struck when I went to Scunthorpe as well, that the men really understood the real crisis the steel industry was in.
Michael Sheen.
Well, you might understand that you're drowning, but that doesn't mean that you don't still want a helping hand to stop yourself from drowning.
I think it was the realism, and even in Redcar, which was a terrible situation, it was this understanding. You can't argue the price of steel has almost halved in 12 months. That's the reality of it. That's why.
And in which case,
losing £1 million a day.
In which case, I would love to hear what the Prime Minister and the government have got in store to help the people of Port Talbot, if indeed the steel industry, realistically speaking, is on decline.
It's a Welsh government decision. But where the door is open, we will always help.
Thank you both very much indeed. Thank you.